It seems nowadays that every movie coming out is either a remake, reboot, or a sequel. Yeah, that needs to stop. Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to a brand new video. Now before I get into it, just to let you know, yesterday I was part of a live stream with UsBritGamerz where we streamed Injustice 2. However, because I am filming this before the live stream, I don't know how it went. So if you guys missed it, go over to UsBritGamerz' channel, the link is in the description, and you can go and watch the live stream and watch me kick some ass on Injustice 2. Or get my ass kicked on Injustice 2. I don't know yet. Fingers crossed it's the first one though. But getting into today's video, I'm thinking about all these different movies that are coming out, and the main one that sort of inspired me to do this video was Blade Runner 2049. Looks like a good movie, yeah, but then again, did we really need a Blade Runner sequel? So in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at a few different movies and franchises that should never ever be touched again in terms of being remade. So without further ado, let's get into it with my first choice, which is Back to the Future. Every time someone says to me, is there any movie that you think is absolutely untouchable, I will always probably say Back to the Future first. It's just one of those films that even though all three of the films are entirely set in the past now, and they do look dated and there are cheesy bits about them and they are quintessentially 1980s movies, just leave them. They are perfect as they are. You don't need to remake them. I don't know if I'm looking at them through rose-tinted glasses, but ever since I first saw them as a kid, I've constantly gone back to them, not all the time, but every now and again through my entire life. And I always thought that when it got to a point where I had children and grandchildren myself, I would still happily show them Back to the Future because it is a movie for whatever generation. There is something quintessentially 80s about it though, like I say, but that isn't necessarily a problem. That is just something that adds to the film in itself. I think if you remade Back to the Future now in the modern era, it just wouldn't work. For example, back in the 1980s, a young kid being friends with an older man who clearly has no relatives whatsoever would be fine. Nowadays, Doc Brown would be arrested for being a paedophile. It was a much more innocent time back then. Plus as well, the DeLorean. It is a quintessential 80s car. Would you reuse the DeLorean in a modern era? Even though it still looks cool now, it would feel slightly out of place. But then again, because the DeLorean is such an iconic car, you couldn't really replace that. It's kind of like the same thing with the TARDIS. It's always got to be a blue phone box. Like with Back to the Future, it's always got to be a DeLorean. The incredible soundtrack, which again is just so 80s, needs to stay. You couldn't reboot that in a modern era. Are you seriously going to replace The Power of Love with some Nicki Minaj shit? And I'm only speaking hypothetically if they were going to remake it in the modern era. They could obviously remake it as if it was still set in the 80s. But because it wouldn't be made in the 80s, it just wouldn't feel right. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, you can't replace them. I cannot think of any other people that could take on that role and nail it like those two did. Their chemistry is impeccable. So pretty much everything about it is flawless. Never ever touch it, Hollywood. Just never touch it. Look what happened with Ghostbusters. Didn't go well, did it? Next up is going to be a surprising choice for a lot of people. Before I say what it is, just hear me out first. The next movie that you should never ever remake is Twilight. Now, I never thought I would be talking about Twilight on this channel, but the reason why I say that is because it was so fucking shit and so fucking awful the first time. I don't want to go through that again. You've learnt from your mistakes now. No one cares about it unless you're a stupid 13-year-old girl that loves all that stupid romantic shit and has no prior knowledge of vampires or werewolves before. Even if you try and improve it, don't even try. It isn't worth it. That's more than enough time for Twilight. So the next film franchise is going to be Rocky. People who watch my channel, you may not be aware that I am actually a huge Rocky fan. I love pretty much every single one of the films, except for the fifth one. I think it's just a great set of movies. I remember going on a marathon of them when I was younger and they were great. Similar with Back to the Future, not all the time, but I will find myself revisiting the Rocky franchise every now and again. And it holds up. Even though there's certain things like with Back to the Future that it dates it somewhat, with the Rocky franchise, I never really get that. It looks perfectly fine now as it did back then. They're such character-driven movies and they are written so brilliantly that if you remade that or tried to touch it again, it just wouldn't work. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's easily Sylvester Stallone's best role for me. I know a lot of people out there like him in Rambo and other things, but for me it's always been Rocky. In fact, every single person in those movies is just great. And I know what some people are thinking, that they are kind of rebooting it, remaking it with Creed, but I don't mind that because that's a continuation and that's something different. That is a new character in the same universe and Rocky Balboa is his mentor figure. It's kind of just carrying on the franchise without tampering with what came before it, and I think that's the best way to do things because Creed as a film was really good. And I believe they are actually doing a sequel, which I'm actually properly excited for. Michael B. Jordan killed it in the first one. So I know that sequels are a problem, but this is both a sequel yet a new franchise in its own right, and I really like that. Plus, it's not only just development for this new character, we also get a lot more development in Creed for Rocky Balboa himself. He goes from this young rookie in the very first movie back in the 70s to the older, wiser mentor figure in Creed. It's great character development, so keep that going. And the storyline, if you haven't seen Creed, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a storyline with Rocky Balboa in that film that was done perfectly, but you just can't touch the originals. So the next franchise that I am going to talk about is sort of in the similar vein of Rocky, and that is going to be Star Wars. Now again, I know that they're obviously going to make sequels and prequels and anthology films, but what I never ever want is to someone to flat out remake A New Hope. And you can stop right there typing, well, that's exactly what The Force Awakens was, because I know those comments are coming. There was a lot of stuff in The Force Awakens that did feel like a retread of A New Hope and other elements of the original trilogy. However, it wasn't totally a remake of A New Hope. Some people need to look past that. It's more of a homage than anything. In fact, my first ever video was actually defending The Force Awakens on subjects such as that. But what I don't want is just a flat out remake of A New Hope, with someone else recast as Luke, as Han Solo, as Leia, etc. Similar to the Rocky franchise, just carry it on with new characters. You aren't necessarily bound by actors because they are going to get older, obviously, and you can do more things with their characters as older people, like The Force Awakens showed. Keep that up. Keep the Star Wars saga going that way. We never need to flat out remake it again. Yes, it is an older film, and it was made in the 1970s. But the thing is, it isn't set in a certain time. It isn't set in a certain place. It doesn't really look dated. The practical effects pretty much hold up now. The only thing that I would say would really date that film is the pacing of it compared to modern day films. But other than that, kids can still be in awe of that first shot of the Tantive 4 flying over the planet and then the Imperial Star Destroyer following it. Ironically, I think the prequels actually look more dated than the original trilogy because of all the green screen and CGI and crap in those films. Don't get me wrong, there is some impressive shots, and I'm not one of those people that just bashes the prequels because I love Revenge of the Sith, but I think if you had to remake any Star Wars movies, probably remake the prequels, but better. But then again, then we'd lose Ewan McGregor, and he's actually really good. I don't know, but at least the original three. You don't need to restart the franchise. Obviously, you can carry it on, which is fine. I do have this fear, because Disney sees Star Wars as this massive cash cow, I don't doubt that in the future they may actually flat out remake it. It brings in money, so why wouldn't they? But the beauty of Star Wars is that you have all these different and exciting and incredible characters and stories that you can tell all the time. Whether you take things from the books or the comic books or video games or whatever, you can use any of that stuff and you will always have a brand new story of Star Wars to tell. Therefore, it would be completely unjustified to remake the originals. I don't think it's a very realistic possibility, but like I say, Disney see this as a cash cow now. They are likely to do anything with it. And of course, there are plenty of other movies and franchises out there that you should never remake again, and I'm probably going to do a second video of this where I talk about a few more. But in the comments below, let me know what you think. Do you agree with my choices? Do you not? What other movies do you want to see just left alone and to never ever be touched and remade again? Whatever they are, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this and all the other crap that will end up on my channel. But until next time, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. No one fucking cares about it unless they're a 13-year-old girl who has no other knowledge of any other book.